Rugby Union Football and Sports Club partnership that we heard from at the beginning of the day. I know that we have some keen movers waiting in the wings. Councillor Simpson's wishing to move this. Is there a seconder?
Have to second.
Councillor Bartley, keen to second. Do we need to unpack this? If there are questions, let's... Chris, Councillor Darby.
Thank you. Chris, okay. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
Look, just in terms of the cost, I'm looking at the cost on what was distributed to us in this little brochure without our logo at 1855, and then in the document it says it's 2.2. So what is the cost, and how is that arrived at? Is it a QS estimate, or are there contracts in place?
Sure, so I can speak to that. The 2.2 was the original cost estimate that the club had come to council with originally. Since that time, they have brought on, I guess, a professional management company to drive through this process for them, which is in the attachment notes, that company. So this is a more refined figure that the club have presented at the 1.885, I believe it was. The question was around the cost of the shot pad and the revised surface that they wish to use. So
we're
the club have presented to
they and we are pretty confident that it'll come in the range of 1855.
Yes.
And so would our grant, originally they were asking for twice what that grant is. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if the project was to come in at under 1855, where does that leave our grant? Is our grant in proportion to the total cost, or if it came in or the project got modified, would we still grant 750? Because what I'm heading to is to reduce our exposure if the project becomes less.
Yeah. That's a good question, Councillor Darby.
So within the funding agreement that will be developed as a consequence of a resolution, we can include the terminology of up to the funding amount, depending on the total cost of the development.
Would it be up to the funding amount of 750, or would it be a proportion? Because at the moment it's a proportion. It's 750 of 1855, and going forward, I would expect if it became a 1.5 or a 1.2 project, that the 750 would be eroded back. So I'm just looking, don't want to be a pain in the backside here, I'm just looking out for our budget.
No, that's a very good question.
We can undertake to do that as a proportion to a cap of that amount, so that if the cost happened to be above the amount we're talking about, that we wouldn't have any more exposure.
Does that need to be reflected in the words?
We're just doing a little bit of work on
Leave
that.
it in your hands,
so at a cap of, or at a maximum of, or whatever. We'll work on that with my very able colleague on my left. I've got Councillor Hills, Councillor Watson, Councillor Simpson.
Cool. Thank you for this, and I'm supportive of it. It's a good partnership. But how does this sort of come forward?
No question.
How does this come forward from groups? Because I can think of things like North Harbour Netball, who the local board funded 200,000 to redo 32 court spaces, and they raised all the money, but the local board had to find that money, and it was amongst a whole lot of other things. So are we going to expect other groups would come forward to us like this, and we would look at them the same? Just because I haven't felt like there was a facility as a local board member the previous 2 terms that would allow our groups to come forward to get quite large amounts of money, and is it just the really organised clubs or past partnerships that will get looked at more kindly, just because I know this will come up in our area.
Sure. So this was a submission through from the club. However, in the future, sport has been doing a lot of work to get itself organised as a sector. There's been pieces of work like the Auckland Sports Sector Facilities Priorities Plan, which is a mechanism via which organisations from throughout the region with support of their regional sporting organisation, can put forward various developments of facilities to a panel from the sector to make, I guess, a prioritisation decision, which would then be useful for funders such as council to look at through the lens of being able to support. There's also pieces of work that council are undertaking, like the sports facilities priorities, investment plan, that also will provide guidance as to the investment into sport and recreation facilities.
Towards partnerships.
And so how would what does the budget look like for this? Because there are groups
Yeah.
across the North Shore that would be wanting this sort of...
That up, Councillor Hills, I think, and we've had a couple of bites at this. We were aiming, I think, for about 120 million. I think we've got the 120 million going into the LTP, and that's exactly that. So this is the partnership funding proposal, utilising the fact that all of our sports groups around the whole region have come together with an agreed strategy and way forward, and this is our chance to do that partnership funding to address exactly the issue, not just the well-resourced, not just the loudest, not just the most fabulous. This is a more equitable regional distribution of that fund.
So this is not sort of random out, that will be kind of
all.
contained within that scope?
Yep.
This is just the first kind of it.
Provided we keep it in the LTP.
Thank you.
No pressure. Councillor Watson.
Thank you. We're proposing to give College Rifles a $750,000 grant. Now, during their presentation to us and in their documentation, they talk about the wider ground utilisation from, you know, schools and other groups and that. And that they, in at least the instance the gentleman quoted, that they're not charging anyone for that. How are we able to perhaps gain a degree of reassurance that that continues, that wider community use continues in the way that it's you know, apparently been rolling out, because obviously that's a better return on our investment if we can ensure that's in some way guaranteed. Are we able to do that?
Through the funding agreement with College Rifles, we will have responsibilities that they provide community access to the surfaces.
Okay, so that's obviously quite generalised, and I don't propose to drill down in X number of hours or anything like that. Are you comfortable that is going to result in the kind of community outcome that's been occurring by all accounts, but will, you know, continue in the future, even if there's, you know, perhaps you know, other demands that they might be making it as a club?
Yes, I'm confident that we'll be able to secure the community access at as good or better levels to what we have currently.
Yeah.
We'll ensure that there's rigour in the funding agreement around that.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Simpson.
Yes, my concern is if we amend the recommendation as Councillor Darby has put up, will that mean that potentially we would be up for some of the OPEX? Because I suppose I know the financials of this deal probably better than most, and this club is willing to pay all the OPEX. We know that they've done that, but now if you're saying potentially they won't get that, they have to pay more of the CAPEX and potentially, and certainly all the OPEX. I just don't understand. I mean, that deal hasn't been mooted with the club, and we're bringing in a new aspect to that right now. I just don't know about the openness and transparency with regarding what has been discussed with them vis-a-vis that. I mean, so my question is, have you suggested that could be less than $750 today to the club?
Yes, we have spoken about smaller contributions to the club. The recommended figure is something that we believe is a good balance between the outcomes that we can receive for council and the support of the club to be able to redevelop.
So I'm going to ask you a more specific question, because so what you're saying is the agreement between the club and council up till today was $750 for the asset, and in return you're doing all the OPEX. It wasn't that it could be anything less. Is that correct? I mean, yeah, I know that you've talked to the club about very amounts of money, but you've all settled on one amount, on one figure, haven't you? And that's the 750.
Correct. There's still to be a funding agreement to be developed with.
Sure.
But that was the intent, and there hasn't been any conversation about council providing any OPEX towards the ongoing maintenance.
No, but you see one point, Madam Chair? So I would be really happy just to leave it at 750 because I know that's the agreement that has happened right up to this point. They're not in the room.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a little bit, if it had been discussed as part of when they were here, fine. But just to bring it up now, I don't think it is I was going to use the word fair, but I don't think that he means to be unfair. Just think we should leave it as it is, is what I'm saying.
Okay. No, we hear what you're saying. I think just two quick points, councillor. I think we don't want to confuse CapEx and OPEX. So this is not talking about OPEX. This is simply saying, and I don't want that message to be relayed to the club because we're not touching the OPEX discussion with this.
I know.
All Councillor Darby was saying, and it's our fiduciary duty to say let's be very clear about the CapEx sum that is being discussed here, and if it was, I would imagine, a separate issue, you're usually pretty hot on, let's make sure we're being as sensible as we can, stewarding ratepayer dollars. The point Councillor Darby was making is if the amount that's actually needed to do this thing reduces, our portion of the grant could reduce at the same level. We are quite clearly saying we're happy with up to 750,000. However, if there's a change in scope or a change in cost, then we can probably bring back our amount of grant while still ensuring that the project gets across the line. I think that's all that's being said.
Yeah.
So we just need to park the OPEX.
Yeah, I understand that, but you're asking, this CapEx is a shared CapEx. It's a partnership. It is shared, so College Rifles have to pay some as well, all right? So I suppose what I'm saying is that there has been no discussion with College Rifles that they may have to pay more.
No. I think we're talking past each other.
Yeah.
Dave or Mace, can you just explain what it is that we're talking about? It's very, very clear.
Good luck.
Yeah.
So the intent is that council can grant up to $750,000 towards the cost of development, which from the latest figures is around that $1.8 million figure, which secures the fields to be developed as part of the council regional sport field network, and also delivers the community access outcomes.
And College Rifles will pay the rest.
And College Rifles will either fund the rest or source to leverage fund from other investors around the remaining figure.
On our behalf, right? Yep.
I think, Madam Chair, if I put myself in College Rifles' shoes, the risk to them is if the project comes in at 1.885, then they get the full 750. If it comes in at 1.6, then proportionally they'll be paying the same proportions as ourselves. So I think the risks are equally shared. I think you provide really good direction for us to work with College Rifles proactively around the funding agreement, to be clear and open and transparent about that.
Okay, Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, Madam Chair, mine was really just around when we enter into these forms of partnerships, which I truly welcome, and I see it as progressive that we are reverting back to the partnership type arrangements. It is important that we have a very good understanding of the expectations on both sides. So whilst it's important that Councillor Darby was able to interrogate the implications of this, similarly though I have a bit of sympathy for Councillor Simpson that we don't want in any way, shape or form to mislead our partners on these projects, and whether there might be an unintentional operational cost associated, which you've given us the assurance it wouldn't be. But I think it probably is beholden on us as governors to really ensure that we have the details on these partnerships, but also expect that it's not going to be a good negotiating point coming to a meeting and perhaps changing where there are expectations. Perhaps there could be some lessons taken from today and how the preparation of the report might be, so that there's greater clarity around that.
Thanks, Madam Chair. We'll take that on board. We are responding to quite a short time frame in this case, but we completely understand what the comments are.
And this in no way reflects any lack of enthusiasm or support for this fantastic partnership. We're just saying, let's just be cautious and sensible. Now, I've got Member Blair, Councillor Filipaina, and then Councillor Watson.
Just comment.
And then
No
I
question.
think we need to deal with this. I am, and I make no apologies for the fact that we are trying to move this along. We've actually got to give you all a chance to grab a bite to eat, and then we have a workshop. So, you know, let's just be focused. Member Blair.
I just wanted to support Councillor Simpson, because I think the College Rifles have proven to be a very successful organisation. I'm quite confused as to why we're trying to make it trickier than it already is to build some sports fields. And I just want to know, is this consistently applied amongst CAPEX, that you have a reduction proportionately, or is this just something we're applying to College Rifles in this case? Is that, and if it isn't something consistent, then why should it be applied? Because I'd like to see the recommendation remain as original.
Madam Chair, typically it's proportional funding for what we seek to do, depending on the circumstances, but certainly proportional funding in the overall cost of the project. As I've understood, the intention is to up to 750, but if the cost reduces, then there's some proportionality around that.
So just a point of clarification, it's on a case-by-case basis, is that right?
Typically on a case-by-case basis, but usually council's proportion has a ceiling on it.
Reduces.
We don't have any other partnerships.
Still keeping the absolute clarity about the fact that we want this to happen. Councillor Filipaina?
Just comment, questions,
No,
comments
comment's
is all
fine.
good? Yeah, thank you. Chair, look, when this first came onto the agenda, I wasn't going to support it. And the reason is because for my sins, I started playing rugby for Matt Wellington. And every time he played College Rifles, we lost. So I wasn't going to support this at all. But look, after reading the report and the questions that I asked, I saw an article, and I remember when it actually came to the fore around the injuries that were sustained by players as a result of their first pitch. So I am quite comfortable and very supportive of the 750,000 and the association we have with College Rifles. One, and especially as a result of what they will do in regards to you know, the pitch that's going to be there. So, you know, when I look at the report, Chair, I also have a look at the hours that we use as a result of these two artificial pitches. I look at the hours, I also look at the hours, but also the artificial pitches, and I'm very envious, because hopefully, and it just sort of goes towards what Councillor Hills was talking about other organisations around the region, not only with North Shore, Waitakere, but also South Side, East Side, you name it. You know, I mean, it's good that when we get into the debate at the long-term plan, Chair, around the funds that we need to put in, it's really about our community, and it's about the hours that we can get out of, and in this particular case, College Rifles. So, you know, definitely support, and you know, I just look forward to some of our areas and clubs looking at the fund, Chair, that you mentioned, the 120 million, and then saying, hey, what can we do to do it? So, you know, ironically, Chair, and I'll finish off with this, ironically, when I saw the members from the Deputation for College Rifles, they actually said to me, and I used to play with one of the delegation against him, but he said that Mount Wellington's playing college rifles, so I might go down and put the jersey on and stand in the side. So I fully support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And councillor Clow.
I must admit, when I played for Suburbs as a Leith outside back, there used to be college rifles.
Second division.
What are you laughing at, the Leith comment or the...
Just getting very bloke.
Very personal,
Is,
boys, very personal.
We,
So, I do have a question.
people are just defending their previous support for the older adult.
Yeah.
We're just, I
to
think the
relive
blokes
their
are
lost
laying
youth.
out their youthfulness and their fitness and their fabulousness. Carry on, councillor Clow.
I have a complaint again against my fellow councillors. Thought it was a prop way back in. Anyway, my question is, they were coming to us originally for 1.5 million because the project was 2.2. Did the 2.2 involve some associated facilities, meaning associated right next door surrounding those fields that they're cutting back on? Because if that was the case, it would be a shame if they're ending up not doing it effectively as well as they would like to. So that was my question.
No, the 2.2 was originally was based off older figures that they had available and was part of their original submission to council. However, with the investigation that they've done, it's coming in at a cheaper.
Thank you.
Some good quantity survey.
Thank you. Okay, I acknowledge the debate, but I think we probably need to put it at this stage.
Well, I'm happy just to leave it as it was, Madam Chair.
We were going to vote on it anyway.
Okay.
This was
I
supported by a member Blair
hear
and
that.
myself.
So what we'll do, seeing you
Costs
are the
don't go
mover,
down these days, do
councillor, to extricate ourselves from this tricky position, councillor Darby, do you want to do yours as an amendment? And then we'll,
Look, if it's not included, it has to be. And as you said, Chair, I'll just, about
Happy to do
15
that as
words, it's our duty to do this.
Okay.
We
They're
should be
paying- they're
doing
paying
this.
all
If
the
that
other
project
costs.
reduced to 900,000, if we
Yeah.
found it reduced to 900,000 and we contributed 750 on the basis that we thought it was 185,
yeah,
I'd be concerned.
okay,
I don't want to reflect back and have that concern. Let's just
all right.
do the
But
job
why
now.
don't we just be grown-ups, you do yours as an amendment, it'll either pass or not pass, then we'll remove the words councillor Simpson from your recommendation and councillor Bartley's recommendation, that's fine. And then we'll go from there. So is there someone who'd like to second councillor Darby's recommendation?
I'll second that.
You happy to second that, councillor Cashmore? Jolly good. Okay. I will put councillor Darby and Cashmore's recommendation. All those in favour? Oh, by division? Okie doke.
Councillor
Right.
Halls,
Aye.
Councillor Bartley, for.
Oh.
Councillor Blair, Member Blair,
Against.
Member Brown,
Against.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cashmore,
Yes.
Councillor Darby,
For.
Councillor Clow,
Yes.
Mayor Goff,
Yes.
Councillor Filipina,
Aye.
Fletcher,
No.
Councillor Hills,
Yes.
Councillor Mike Lee,
Aye.
Councillor Simpson,
No.
Councillor Stewart,
Against.
Sir John Walker,
He played men's netball, didn't he?
Councillor Walker,
Yes.
John Walker.
Yeah.
Oh, yes for John Walker.
Yes, for Wayne Walker.
Yes. Councillor Watson.
Yep.
Okay.
Carried 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay. So that's been carried. So that becomes the substantive, which I'll simply put.
Can I speak to it?
Can I?
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, I'll just be quick. I think that amendment will end up being academic because that will getting it for that price is
Yeah.
I think is pretty competitive and just on that, council is getting a good deal, and I commend the officers for the report and the manner in which this this proposal has been dealt with, because anyone that has a look at the costs for just regular maintenance of sand slitting and procedures like that, it's 200, 250 grand every few years. So for over a decade, that's an extremely good deal, and that's not even taken into account the fact that it can be used virtually in any weather conditions or at any time of the year. So this is definitely the way of the future, and I think it's good to see some sort of recognition of the historical nature of some of these clubs that have actually given council a good deal. If we look back over the decades where they've developed playing fields themselves, developed their own club rooms, often run them themselves as well. And there are other clubs in that condition too. And I hope that we take advantage of this very cost-effective, long-term view that actually results in a far better investment for the community, for community use, and also for utilisation of the fields. They don't have a choice here because they've got nothing else. They're in the middle of Remuera. We're not going to get any fields elsewhere. That also applies to other parts of Auckland now, and also to other clubs that, while perhaps not as well resourced as College Rifles, can come up with a proposal that results in a very productive outcome for the council and the ratepayers. So I thank the officers for this, and I'm sure this will fly through.
Good. I'm really concerned now about the time. I think we've all had a good say. We're really enthusiastic about this. We want to see that happen. And bigger picture, I look forward to everyone's endorsement of the 120 million in the LTP for the partnership fund. I'm going to put this. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you very, very much, and thank you to the staff who've worked so hard on this. Thank you, Councillor Simpson, and I hope that this is explained well to our College Rifle team, who we are hugely supportive of. Let's move on to item 13, and I want to welcome Steve Armitage, who's here to talk to us briefly about Destination Auckland. Welcome, Steve. Sorry to keep you waiting. Great piece of work. Lots of stakeholders, lots of enthusiasm, lots of positivity.
Thank you.
Over to you.
I didn't want to take up too much time. Obviously, just a brief recap. We've liaised with this committee on 2 previous occasions, once by way of a workshop to seek direct input into the development of the strategy, and then again an update back in March. I was delighted to be able to send the final strategy through to you over the course of the weekend. The strategy is about those involved in the visitor economy, both public and private sector, recognising that we can do more to make this region a much better place to visit, and by association to live and work in. The city has changed a great deal since the Auckland Visitor Plan was endorsed by the council back in 2010, and we need to do a better job of understanding the impact that visitors are having on the changing city, and adjust our focus accordingly. And as a result, as you will see in the strategy, there's a much stronger emphasis on collaboration than there has been at any other point. And I'm particularly pleased that we're able to conclude the strategy with the signatories from a number of the larger organisations who play a leading role, not just across Auckland, but nationally in terms of how we drive the visitor economy. There's a drive for much stronger alignment and focus towards what we're working to deliver by 2025, and that we can do more collectively to protect and preserve our environment, something that's been touched on a number of occasions this morning. I think it's important to emphasise that the strategy is not the end point. In many respects, the really hard work begins now. We have identified some 50 actions that we are focused on working our way through, some of them that we'll be needing to do in the short term, and others that will follow to 2021, when of course we're wanting to position the city in the best possible light for the America's Cup and the hosting of Leaders Week in November of 2021. So that's really, other than that, I did want to say that we feel that there's very strong alignment to the Auckland Plan and how that's coming together. We think the destination strategy can play a key role in a number of the focus areas that are emerging through the Auckland Plan. And we're now looking at how we can incorporate the direction that the strategy provides the sector more broadly into the bits that ATEED can take ownership of, and look forward to having those plans finalised ahead of 1 July. Thank you.
Steve, thank you, and thank you for taking the time to be here, and it is a very good piece of work. Councillor Casey.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I'm having trouble, Steve. When did we get the final copy?
I sent it to all of you on Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon.
It's on the hub?
I don't have the hub, I'm sorry. I need to print my things out to read them.
But it was also emailed.
I guess you just said Saturday. That was the weekend today.
Yep.
Apologies.
Okay. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. And thank you for inviting me down to one of your sessions, chaired by Martin Steadden. Was most interesting. Your outcomes and your processes are great. One thing I'm looking for is the regional context, the spread of your outcomes. Can you give some commentary around that, please?
Well, regional dispersal is one of the areas that we do focus on quite significantly, and it's also one of the reasons why we have sought to involve Auckland Transport as a key contributor to the development of the strategy. I think I touched on this when I last presented to the committee, that we have had a tendency to promote regional dispersal as part of our destination marketing activity, and a lot of the time we're promoting areas where it's very difficult for our visitors to get to, and that accessibility and dispersal issue is something that we've really wanted to resolve. As a result, we have been working directly with the Auckland Transport executive team and also presented to their board last month, seeking their endorsement of the strategy and an acceptance that we need to do more to promote the connectivity across the region. And I'm pleased to say that they were in unanimous support of incorporating the strategy into their forward planning. So I do feel that we're doing more to bring the council's significant resource together in a way that we haven't done before, and that we'll be able to promote that regional dispersal more effectively.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Steve. I think this is a really good paper, and I think it's great that we've moved from destination marketing to destination management, and we've acknowledged that what we're looking for out of the big boost that's going to come from tourism is more than just economic prosperity, but it's about environmental sustainability and the social impact. My question is really two things that may stand in the way of achieving the goals, and you touch on both of them in terms of your objectives. One is connectivity and the well-known problems that we've got with transport congestion, and the degree to which you think that we can deal with that over a time frame where you're going to increase your number of visitors by about 58% internationally, and that's in 5 years. And the second is skills. You're aiming at 76,000 jobs out of tourism for the region, which is great. How confident are you that we have the plans in place that will create the skill enhancement levels that will require?
So if I deal with the skills question first, the first thing we need to overcome is a perception issue that jobs in the tourism sector are not particularly high-paying jobs. A recent paper that was finished by the Oxford Economics group and to help inform the development of a US Travel Association plan indicated that people who have a first job working in the travel or tourism sector in the US end up going on to make an average of around $82,000 a year, and that 40% of those go on to earn more than $100,000. It's not that they've stayed within the sector, but it creates a pathway or opportunities for people to move into other vocations, and the groundings that you can develop, the hospitality sector provides in particular, are a good basis for people to be able to progress in their careers. So we feel we've got a much better job to do around how we create a sense of what a vocation in tourism can lead to, and that can create a sustainable employment base to address the skills issue. On the transport matter, I mean, it goes to why we've been trying so hard to engage Auckland Transport in the development of the strategy, and why we need to do more with NZTA as well. We believe that the visitor economy and preparing for the growth of the visitor economy can actually solve some of the issues that you grapple with on a day-to-day basis, and that we're all familiar with from a congestion point of view, and can take some of the pressure off the system, but also help to inform future planning. And we were delighted to see the announcement around ATAP, because we feel that absolutely plays a vital role in unlocking this strategy as well.
Thank you. Can I just ask one additional? The projected increase in income for Auckland is just phenomenal. Over the next 7 years, you're looking at it going from 8 billion to nearly 14 billion. That's an 85% increase. I get a bit nervous about projections of that scale. What confidence have we got that forecast is likely to be realised? Because there are lots of qualifiers, including the state of the international economy, etc.
Yes, it's provided some debate internally as well. We've actually purposefully erred on the side of caution in terms of some of the projections that we've seen there. So some of the analysis would suggest that the number is significantly higher than that. But we need to do a much better job, and the strategy highlights this, around focusing the high value visitors, and opportunities like the America's Cup obviously present in a pretty unique way the super yachts that we can attract down here, the opportunities to showcase investment opportunities into the city. There are a number of other business events and conventions that we're looking to attract to showcase the city and to stimulate investment off the back of the NZICC opening as well. So we feel that there is a lot more we can do around targeting value, and that the ultimate contribution to our GDP will grow as a result of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Member Blair.
Kia ora, Steve. Just wondering why our report template lacks a context and local board input or Māori impact statement in your report, firstly?
That's purely because of the very late addition of this item to the agenda, and that's my apologies for that.
Okay, I've just got some questions around why, in terms of your depth of Māori engagement, I see Air New Zealand's on there as a Māori tourism leadership group. Just wondering why they're not Māori or Māori owned, so I'm wondering why they're included in there.
Our view has been that they've been doing some excellent work in this space, and provide a very useful example to others around how to embed Māori principles and a focus on Māori initiatives into their business.
I'd kind of counteract that to say that they aren't on a different, another set, but purely just through identity. As a Māori organisation, I'm concerned that I'm getting feedback from that a number of groups haven't been consulted in this to contribute to this strategy. So I see you've just consulted with 2 mana whenua groups and not anyone else.
Well, invitations went out to all, but we can only manage what we get back in terms of feedback. So we have endeavoured, best endeavours, to ensure that we've been able to liaise with all iwi and give everybody the same opportunity. But the uptake has been mixed, as you've highlighted.
And I'm just wondering why we continually do not give Māori and Pacifica their own mana. We're always trying to combine the response, whereas I feel they need their own mana to be able to contribute to the strategy, and it's not just always Māori and Pacifica, it's Māori and Pacifica separately. Yep. Because I think when we get mixed up into the same pot, everyone thinks we're from the same cultures, the same families and the same wakas, when we're actually very distinct iwi, very distinct families, very distinct people, and they need to have their own contribution and reflection in here. I see Māori's one of the top 3 priorities, along with connectivity and there's one other, sustainability. So, I'm just seeing how, based on the limited feedback you got back, how we, Māori is one of those priorities.
I think that's a fair comment, and in the actions at the back of the document, we've purposefully separated the areas where we feel that Pacific communities and Asian communities can contribute, but that could be emphasised in a stronger way. I think the point I made earlier is also important to take on board, that the strategy is a starting point, not an end point, and the actions that we need to now move through to delivering on will require, in my view, very strong input from Māori communities, Pacific communities, Asian communities and others. So really the test of this is, if we're standing at 2025 and looking back, how successful have we been at bringing into the decision making and delivery the respective communities that we're talking about?
Yeah, and my final comment is, I just think Māori were here first, it's their city, and in 2025, how do we position, I don't think we've had enough consultation to move their city forward to 2025. So I'd encourage, if you need help to get to those iwi, then please sing out, because we need to push our city forward, but if they don't come along with it, then I think you're going to come up against some quite robust blocks there from the iwi.
I welcome the offer. I certainly feel that we have attempted to reflect the importance of Māori to this place, and in developing the guiding principles, that was absolutely at the core of what we do. And we say, as part of the guiding principles, that we need to be guided by mana whenua as we move through to delivering the strategy. But yeah, I'd absolutely welcome the offer you've made there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Darby.
Thank you. Thanks for your work, Steve. Just in terms of the inputs, those that worked on this, and I think you outlined that in the background part of the strategy, did the Office of the Chief Sustainability Officer for Auckland Council, was he an integral part of contributing to the sustainable part of this destination program? And if so, what was his or their input?
Yes, there has been engagement between our team and that office, and we're actively working with them on the development of the tourism plan that sits underneath this. And in fact, we're also engaging with Sir Rob Fenwick as part of that process, given the work that he's done around sustainability and continues to champion. And we're looking at adopting the EnviroMark program into our operations we believe we'd be the first signatory to that as an RTO, to indicate that we are 100% committed to the notion of sustainability. But the relationship with the office that you've highlighted there is important to us, and we want to continue to grow it.
Thank you. Second question on sustainability. In the vision, it talks about the vision for Auckland being sustainable on 3 of the 4 well-beings, but not all 4. And the one that's missing is, it includes economically, socially and environmentally. It doesn't identify cultural sustainability. Was that canvassed, and how did you arrive at that not being relevant, so cultural sustainability not being relevant to overall sustainability?
My response to that would be that the cultural sustainability piece is actually reflected in other parts of the document, but you're right, it could be more explicitly referenced against that. We're very clear in the strategy that we need to do more to protect and preserve our culture, and to bring that more to prominence in terms of how we present the city, and our own appreciation of what it means to live in this place. So I think that's more an oversight, but is pretty strongly reflected throughout the majority of the strategy.
So just exploring that, because it's a good document.
Yep.
So given the importance of this place having a Māori identity, are you saying it is an oversight that needs to be reviewed, or, I mean, it's in the vision and it's sort of fundamental to what makes us Auckland?
I think it's in the document. I just think we probably need to add that word into the for sustainability.
And it can be?
And it can be.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Filipaina.
Just questions, Chair? Or
just questions.
Just questions?
Yep.
Steve, the strategy, yes or no, is this a living document?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that picks up the point of
Yeah,
being able to change and
and I'll
adapt.
just save my, reserve my right to speak.
Okay, you're happy to move it and
Yeah.
speak when you move it. Okay, Member Brown.
Kia ora, Steve. I need to disclose a conflict insofar as chair the tribe that was actually one of the iwi engaged, but some of my questions have been touched on around the process, regionalisation, and the omission, if you were, of the cultural elements. Appreciate it's a living document, but if it lives like humans, then it dies at some future point. Question I have really is around, in your Māori outcomes, how do you propose to operationalise them? So if you're still working away at the Māori component, be it cultural, be it substance, then how are the outcomes going to be operationalised? So, and the assumption is that in the LTP there's something there. Are you in a position to communicate that at the moment or not?
Well, we're already starting to look at how we can move from the strategy development through to execution, and one of the things we're shortly going to be entering into is we're going to be signing an MOU with NZ Māori Tourism, identifying around 20 areas that we feel we need to focus in on and that have a direct relationship to the Te Tai Takitini program. Off the back of that, ATEED will be developing a Māori tourism plan that sits underneath the strategy. The success of that will be measured against how we're able to build a collaborative relationship with mana whenua and bring them into the decision making and the focus that plan lands. And so, Renata's offer around helping to broker a relationship and a discussion with those who have an active interest in the development of the visitor economy and can see opportunities off the back of that is something that I'm very keen to pursue and to prioritise pretty quickly.
Just on that, I think I got it. Then going back to where you ended, it's all about process really, eh? So if I could capture what you were asking, if we had a bridge potential straight off the cuff, I'd encourage that we improved comms with the IMSB officials. I see them, they'll be hugely helpful, not so much for the Māori tourism operators today, because they're operating more around having more acute awareness of Māori who want to operate but aren't at the moment. I see the strategy as being arguably as much attractive to them for those of us that are currently operating, or as well as, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Brown. Councillor Hills.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And obviously there have been a huge number of organisations you've worked with, over 150, as I can see. But we did get feedback a few months ago when we had an iwi governing body sort of day, and the feedback from a lot of iwi groups was that we were over-consulting or asking too much of those groups. Do you think that has potentially been an issue or a barrier, or you just had not been getting replies at all from some groups, or they didn't see it as... did you get any feedback from those iwi that weren't keen to engage?
I think the question around whether there's over consultation is an interesting one, and I'm sure that we know what we are asking for input on, but we don't have clear line of sight to what other parts of council are also asking. So I'd have to assume that there's truth in that. There's also mixed capability, I guess, in terms of resources that some iwi are able to apply to this. So. We all as a council, it's not just ATEED's responsibility, I think, need to do a better job in this space. We need to do more to work with IMSB and Te Waka Rangamua to work on a way of engagement that doesn't put too much stress and strain on iwi, and which gives them a much easier ability to input into what we're doing.
Thanks, Steve. Councillor Casey.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I've located your email from Saturday, and I realise now why it's not on the agenda, even in confidential, because It's being publicly launched by the Mayor and the Minister on the 1st of May.
Yeah, Friday.
So it would have been helpful, though, to have had it in a confidential agenda so that we can see it as we speak to the meeting. I've just looked at the list of, and I'm going to vote against it because I haven't read it, that's the only reason, but I'm looking at the members of the consultation page, and just the question is, was the Maunga Authority part of your consultation?
I believe so, but I would need to go back and confirm that.
Okay, it's not listed here. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, we're just having a bit of a little chat about, taking some of this collective discussion. How do we support our CCOs and our external agencies, remembering this isn't just a AT document, this is an Auckland document. How do we make sure that we do plug all those gaps, talk to everyone that's needed, because we do seem to end up in this place every time we try and do something, and somewhere we need to move that discussion forward. So I think that is a wider whole of council, CCO, IMSB, Te Waka Angamoa, iwi, Mātāwaka forum discussion. Otherwise we miss the fantastic stuff that's in here, because we just talk about what might not be in here, and I think that is a disservice to the work that's done, but it in no way minimises the points that have been made. We just need to deal with them. Okay, those were questions. Anyone wishing to speak to this? Councillor Filipaina, you're happy to move. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, just very briefly, Chair, and Steve.
Do you want a second?
No, I want to speak.
Okay. Right.
Yep, so Steve, just with the work that's been done and obviously with the people that you have and done the facilitation role, just please pass it back to them to say thank you. And those signatories on the actual strategy and on page 20 indicates, I think, to everybody here who they were. For me, is just closing the loop in regards to the workshop we had, then came back here. So, definitely end up will be supporting this. But I just wanted to sort of also acknowledge page 34, and that's the delivery of the strategy. The short, medium, and long term, that's just so important. It's similar to having a long-term plan, 10-year strategy that's aligned with the Auckland plan. So can you please pass on to Martin our thanks in regards to the role that he played in this. In regards to Māori, I mean, it's like the horse in the water. You know what I mean? You sent out the invitations and only 2 chose to, and I congratulate those that wanted to be part of it. But the reason I asked the question around a living document is that from my perspective, at least, that channel's not closed off. You know, that's the best thing. It's not closed off. Same with our Pacific. I mean, it's the largest Pacific country in the world, and that's with Tāmaki Makaurau. So, you know, for me, it's a starter, and I just look forward to us. But I just wanted to close off on what the chair said around. It's not Auckland Council's. It's not AT strategy. It's actually Auckland strategy. You know, that's the key thing. It's like the Auckland plan. That's not our Auckland plan. It's Auckland Council's plan. It's Auckland's plan. So look, I just look forward to the results, but continual talk with our communities. Kia ora. Thank you, Chair.
Kia ora, thank you. So Councillor Filipaina is happy to move. Hills, the second, Member Brown speaking to the recommendation, and then I think we'll put it.
So, speaking to it so far as picking up Steve's comment around the evolving space of Māori, mentioning other entities and units within Council's family, like, it just felt like, Steve, that when I asked about operationalise, you've brought in all of these other folk that I can see the relevance, but I can almost see a default of your responsibilities in that space around it's your strategy or our strategy, but you know, the claim of Toa Takatini, those things are starting to worry me because in the practical sense, it's almost like somebody's going to start finger pointing around, it's not my strategy. Especially when those of us who are in operations are trying to optimise that. So, like, I just need to be clear that ATEED own and lead the strategy. They have full mandate and responsibility for it, because if it is that the practicalness is that we're to talk to everyone else other than ATEED or as well as ATEED, that for us is getting a really bit grey.
Sorry, perhaps I just didn't articulate that clearly enough. My reference to Te Takitini was simply to demonstrate that this relates to that overarching piece of work. Absolutely, ATEED takes ownership for the plan that will sit underneath this around how we deliver on our tourism strategy for the next 5 years, and the relationship to the development of the Māori tourism plan that sits within that.
Madam Chair, I wondered if we could tease, if not test, an amendment insofar as capturing the commitments made at this table without it being caught up in a resolution, in particular for Māori and Pacifica, and particularly for Māori around. So we know there's a commitment from our officials to work with, say, the IMSB folk, but I actually want that formally caught up as opposed to relying on officials at their leisure or at their commitment getting that stuff sorted for us. So the fact is, right now the strategy has not canvassed Māori or Pacifica beyond the current tools and instruments that Steve's referred to. I accept that all the tribes were written to. However, I also would understand that that's in the myriad of other responsibilities and priorities that are being written to them as well by council and other folk. I'm not excusing them, but I'm conscious that out of the 19 this council treats with, that only 2 have formally engaged in the process. And so for us at least, we need some confidence around the Māori space still evolving with Steve and the team, and I suggest that an amendment would be that there is that commitment, in fact, back to mana whenua, Pacifica, but also the IMSB officials, so that, and this has just been suggested, so that this Māori space that seems to be a moving beast is actually captured and nurtured through to the points that it needs to be nurtured through on strategy. So, Steve, I really appreciate what you've done. I understand it, but I'm going to have some difficulty voting for it, mate, because of what I'm alluding to.
In the actions at the back of the strategy,
just clarify, the recommendation.
I think it helps us move over the line around that confidence at this table that there is a resolution or an addition here that binds ATEED to the officials of the IMSB to continue working through the space, and also a commitment from ATEED to at all times continue the process of engaging with mana whenua and Pacifica.
In the back of the strategy are the actions that we, and they're not an exhaustive list, that we feel need to be focused and delivered on in the lead up to 2025.
Yep.
And against, I think almost a third of them, mana whenua are listed as a key contributor.
Yep. But I appreciate that, I can see that, but I want it up here on the minutes, like for this around substantiating that commitment and that document that after this meeting is going to disappear into a whole heap of other documents.
Right.
That's right.
We've got wording up there. Does that suit your ends, Member Brown?
Yep, thank you.
Jolly good. Right, so we've got that moved and seconded, got the commitment there as an ongoing commitment, and I'm going to put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Councillor Casey, you want your vote recorded against that? Against everything?
I haven't read it. I'm sorry.
Well, we could have printed
Well,
it out.
I think, councillor, and we
Staying.
just do need to note that there is an expectation that councillors will keep up with their emails and.
I'm
it
terribly
just-
sorry I've let you down.
No, I'm just saying.
But I won't vote for something I haven't read. That's just that.
Fair enough. Okay, let's move on. Steve, thank you. Appreciate your
Saturday
time.
afternoon.
I'm
Bound to
going
speak
to, I'm going to move items
Saturday
14.
afternoon and not a hard coffee.
I'm
and
going
in the
to,
poo.
hang on, councillors, can we just have a little bit of attention to detail? You might like to pick that up with your CSA, councillor Casey. I'm going to move items 14 and 15, and I'll move the exclusion
on a
of
Saturday either.
public. Councillor Philip Pioneer will second those three items. I'll put those. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against, carried.
We don't want to keep
Right,
you-
we've just got two items.